trekking literally across the country. It's not the I'll just make a couple hour flight, 3 hour cruise. It's like, no, it's an adventure to go through the process. Actually, you previous to just starting the show right now, you had asked about whether we could talk a little bit about the conference, and I would love to. The other, I want to make sure we don't forget. Hey, Kat, how are you?
Great. Hi, everybody. Good morning.
Kat Mohammed, Director of Education with AHOA, but we just call her Kat. Well, I do because I can't say her name.
We're still there, Lauren.
We are still there. I am afraid I am intimidated by your name because I don't know where to put the I.
That silent H, I'm sure, doesn't help either.
I was just talking with Stephanie that we want to talk a little bit about the HSMA conference that we just had. You have your conference coming up, which we can obviously hit as well. But I also, this escalation of the coronavirus, I'm already getting a lot of questions as to ramifications of, well, what do we do if diminished demand because of something like this? So I definitely, if we can throw that into the mix of, I know that Robert sent us a wonderfully curated list again, but I don't transcribe that we have to follow it, item for item for this. But so Steph, we didn't get to hear from your perspective of last week's conference. So what did you get from all of the fun stuff? What did you see from last week?
I go to this conference usually every year, so I like it because of all the fantastic people that are there. So many of the management companies that I know in the past are representative there, but I also got to hang out with a lot of new faces. Lily and I did some dinners, shout out. I got to room with Andressa, a new friend of mine, shout out. So, yeah, and I mean, you were there at one of the evenings when we went out. I have a favorite place there. This is outside of the conference, but I still, to me in my head, I associate HSMAI with going to this piano bar called Don't Tell Mama. And I have been going there for 3 years. So we had a whole gaggle of people. And so, Lauren, I was happy to see you show up after your Hamilton excursion. So
I have to say that I'm duly impressed with your friendship circle, because when you posted it on LinkedIn, it's like everybody's like, yeah, it's like, wow, Stephanie has some peeps, because everybody's talking about, yeah, remember this, remember that. And then for it to be such a tradition, because and Kat, sorry, when I first joined them, I never had been to this bar before. And so they're all piled in the back of the room, stacked like dominoes, because it's a small place, as all New York little bars that are fun to go to are. And the waiters and everybody else sing. And boy, they sing. I mean, wow, like opera singing.
While they're making drinks.
While they're making drinks. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, it's like, okay, they said the waiter's going to go over and sing. And I'm like, okay, well, that should be interesting. And all of a sudden, bang, I'm like, that's Freddie Mercury with the Queen all of a sudden. It's like, seriously, the voice and everything was just really, really good. So I can see why that would be a tradition of going there for it, yes. And yes, I did go to Hamilton. Well, look, did I mention that way, Bill? Look, oh.
But no, the content at the conference was good too. I mean, biasly, I got to present, so obviously, I thought that was
the best.
Yeah, I mean,
naturally.
There's some nerves in there. I think it's harder for me. I think it's easier for me to talk to a room full of people that I don't know than it is to talk to a half where I know half the faces that are looking at me. Including the VP of Digital for Marriott sat about 2 feet in front of me as I was presenting. So,
yeah,
thanks, Alex.
Yeah, and here's the thing. So I go in there with my 360 camera, long stick, waving it around to get video of her, so she has some sizzle reel. And I asked some questions at the very end and so forth. And at the very end, when she was all done, I go over and say, "Wow, that was really great." And she says, "Did you ask any questions?" I'm like, "What?" "Yeah." She says, "Oh, I was in the zone." So just as a hallmark, Kat, when you bring her in and she does a presentation, she gets into her own world.
Yeah, you have to, in a way.
I kind of black out, and then I wake up into consciousness, and I'm like, "Oh, it's done." I don't know.
Dedication. That sounds like full commitment.
She was great with the answers, the Q&A and so forth. She was rock solid, and because you may not have remembered, I actually recorded that, and that's the second video I got to send to you. I have the one video you saw with everybody's clapping, saying "Yay, you!" And then I have a 6-minute video where I'm waving it around the room, so I get everybody's faces and everything else, and people listening to you answer the Q&A. So. And Kat, you did great.
You asking me a question, as you know he does, Kat, where it's 16 questions
piled together in one.
Yeah,
and you're lightning speed. I think I heard half of the second to last question.
Yeah, exactly. You know what I'm talking about. So he did that to me, in front of 50 people. So.
Oh, it was more than that. There was more people than that. I think it was a good 100-ish that was in the room. When you see the video, you'll see you were
I
full.
thought you were
People
blacked
standing up
out.
against the back
Yeah.
wall. Yeah, you were in the zone. You didn't. Yeah.
So, I was really curious, Stephanie. I don't know if you participated in that lightning round. I saw that Tammy had done a post about it on LinkedIn, and that sounded like it would be a really intense moment.
I did not do lightning round. That one but I've already been challenged to potentially do that next year. But I mean, that's you have 20 seconds per slide, and you have what 6 minutes and 40 seconds, and you just they're gonna move the slide on whether you like it or not. So Tammy nailed it.
It's probably the hardest. I mean, I cheated. Well, when we first started doing these, actually, I was sure the board at the time, and we thought we'd drop this into this, and so I was one of the first guinea pigs to go do this, and I'm like, me keeping me contained, no, not going to happen. So, but I had a time limit. But what I did do was I changed the speed of the slide transitions to be longer or shorter, depending upon how much I wanted to talk about that slide, so they weren't all the same amount of time. And then I put a sneaky bar. I put a square on the bottom, but just above the bottom edge of the screen to see it. And then I did a time of it sliding, so I could tell when the slide was ready to change, so I could sound like I was on time. What the heck is that, Robert? What the heck are we looking at?
It's time for the cleaning lady.
Robert, is that your office? That's a set. That's bad. I mean, my office is cluttered, but that's messy clutter.
Oh, goodness.
Anyways, what are some things? I mean, did you like the keynotes?
I did. I was going to say, Kat, you should incorporate the lightning into your.
Yeah, I like those. It sounds like it's a sink or swim, possibly with a lot more sinkers. So I'd be curious.
It is hard. It is hard to be mentally timing yourself to what you have on the screen, because you can get ahead of yourself. You're talking about the next slide before the next slide comes up. You can not finish what you're saying before the slide transitions. And yeah, there's some crash and burns.
Well, actually, it must feel like you hit, like you just ran a marathon.
It is.
Yeah, I only struggle with maybe one of the keynotes. No offense to the guy with the book, but I felt like that was kind of a book spiel, and maybe he didn't want to cut his slides to the proportion of time that he had. But
I didn't like him at all, to be honest with you. One, he showed 5 minutes.
Sorry, guy. I forgot your name, but sorry.
Yeah, the last guy at the end. No, we covered this on last week's show too. This is, Kat, you can empathize with this more than we can 1,000 times over. He shows up 5 minutes before he's supposed to get on stage. He's the closing keynote. He walks up on stage. He doesn't use your template. He uses his, which is nothing but his website and call thing on the bottom and book link and all this other crap. And he takes the deck. There's 6 sections to the deck. Didn't even bother to take out the parts he couldn't get to. Just speed slided through them, saying, well, we don't have time for that, time for that, time for that. Didn't even change his terminology from customers and clients to guests. We couldn't even say the name of the hotel company he was referring to. He kept calling it Accor or something. And he kept talking about how we didn't have time, and then played videos on top of that out of his thing. And
they were completely useless. I mean, they were funny, but they were completely
useless. It was just filler. And walked off stage and left. He says, well, if you have a question about any of this, you can come talk to me. And he walked right out the door, right out the door. I was like, okay, thank you. Good night. Try the veal. It's like, and he was the closing keynote. I'm like, if you don't even have the courtesy to adapt the deck to what you're talking about and not speed slide it. It was a 6-step process, and you did 1, 2, and 6-ish.
Now, you can always tell when a presenter is not prepared. And that, I mean, it just makes you look bad overall, not just the individual, but the, overall quality you were aiming for. So that is unfortunate. Yeah, I definitely can understand. And with the 5 minutes right before is enough to have your heart going, your heart rate.
It's a lot to shove into basically a 1-day conference. I did the pre-day, the first day of breakouts, which I know a lot of people choose not to do. I think there was some communication from what I hear from other people. They didn't really know about those. So maybe some feedback there, but I thought that it was a much better job not being like a vendor sales pitch. It was much more educational this year compared to maybe what it has in the past. So kudos to at least recognizing that. And Milestone again did a great job with their very, very informational approach to their breakout. So that was great.
Yeah, Tammy. Well, first she won the top 25 this year, which is kudos to her. She got that same big chunky of metal. She's like I said, be careful when you go through security with that. They're going to go over and do a body search because that thing's a 10-pound piece of aluminum. But she did a great. Her Pikachuka, she did great with. But also their presentation. They really, and I say this all the time about Milestone with Banu and Anil. They do really good webinar content.
They do.
I mean, I highly recommend if you catch up with their webinars, they do solid content every time they do presentation. They just don't do the pitch, as you said. They don't just, hey, we do this, and everything's in our service profile. It's like, no, they really go into the content development. They're really doing great with their GDPR and CCPA coverage right now recently. They're solid. When it comes to SEO, they're a very solid company. Software-wise and so forth, we can have other discussions. But, when it comes to what they have as content, it's really solid. And they have their own conference that they do now.
Yeah, it's in July.
Yeah.
So I want to tell a story though of something that happened to me at HSMAI, and I told Stuart, and he said I had to tell this on the show. So, and you probably heard part of it, Lauren, but when I was going to the breakouts the first day, I went to registration, and you sign into the computer, and I set my phone down. So I then go on to the bathroom. I'm talking with some friends. I go to my first breakout. I sit down in the breakout, and I said, where is my phone? So that panic that ensues when you're like, where's my phone? And I'm like looking all over. I can't find it. And at that point you start going, where did I have it last? When did I have it last? So I'm starting to backtrack. I'm going back to the bathroom. I'm going back. I'd had lunch in the restaurant. So then I'm going to, the registration desk, and I'm in all this panic, and nobody at the registration desk has seen it. So I don't really know what to do at this point. So I try to go up to FedEx just to use the business center so I can use the thing to see if I can do the Find My Phone app. Well, of course, I don't have my phone and my credit cards are together, so I can't put my credit card into the computer to use the internet. So I have to go all the way up to my room, log on, and I'm emailing my husband. I'm like, turn on the Find My Phone app, start pinging my phone. So he goes on there, and thank goodness he's actually fairly responsive for once. And he says that, of course.
Hey, for husbands all out the world, we're always responsive, just not timely.
I've turned off. I like to go and turn all my apps off on a regular basis. So, of course, I've turned off my GPS on my phone, and it doesn't work. So the Find My Phone isn't working. So he's doing that thing where it's making my phone blow up. So I go back down. I end up talking to the lady in the bathroom that's cleaning the bathroom. She was so sweet. She let me use her phone. I call my husband so that I can be like, tell him what's going on. I don't know how much time has elapsed when all this happened. Then I go back to my room, and I'm like, well, I really don't know what to do other than sit here and, hopefully someone, like emails me or my husband, I don't know at this point what's going to happen. So then I get an email from my husband. He was like, the lady on the 4th floor that I'd been talking to in the bathroom, she has your phone. So I'm like, okay. So I go back down there, and they left it at registration. She had figured it out. But what had happened was, and she had called my husband back because she went through all the numbers that I called, including my phone, and just started calling all the numbers that I had called to let them know what happened.
Wow.
But somebody from the conference, and I told them, they knew who it was at the registration desk, but I said, don't tell me who it is, had picked up my phone and took it with them to the breakout. Oh, wait, I left out the biggest part. In the mix of all this, I call Lost and Found. They don't answer, Lost and Found. So I have the bellman call from a different number. And the guy was like, I'm on break. Call me back in 15 minutes. And hung up on me. And I was like, will you at least hear what I've lost? And he's like, well, I've been on break for 15 minutes, so I probably don't know what it is anyways. So I know it's union, but he wouldn't even speak to me. So the lady, thank you to the people that was cleaning that went through the extra effort, but Lost and Found and union, like that was just not cool. So, and not cool to the person who decided to take my phone, and when it was pinging throughout the entire breakout, chose to continue to hold on through it to the end of the breakout.
And you don't know who that person is?
No, No, Julie knows who it is, but I said don't tell me.
First rule of anytime you find anything like a phone is you immediately like, who did I last see standing here or whatever it is, and then to your point, go find lost and found. Go find, because that's the first thing most people do is they're going to say, what's the traditional way of finding something? Hopefully somebody turned it into that traditional way, like lost and found, front desk, whatever, and then let the conference organizer know, it's like, hey, I found a phone. This is where I found it. If anybody's asking for it, I'm going to lost and found to give it to the hotel in case they're reaching, that's what you do. It's because everybody knows
that. Like common sense, right? And it's pretty clear that when my ID is sitting right there beside my phone, like you just say, "Oh, let me see if this person." I actually know whose phone it is because there's a picture ID sitting right there with it. How hard is that?
Hey, when you find out whoever it is, let us know. We'll go take them out.
I don't want to.
Lauren, you have this all wrong. You get the phone. You first try to figure out the passcode. You get in there and you start figuring out what you can find. I mean, there might be banking apps. There could be all sorts of cool stuff.
Okay, so note to self: don't let Robert find your phone because you know where that's going to go.
Actually, I did. Actually, it wasn't a phone. It was an unlocked computer. Somebody got up and went to the break or the restroom or something like that and left their computer there sitting next to me. It was a friend of mine, just unlocked right there with his email and everything like that. And I thought, well, this is an outstanding opportunity for a learning lesson.
Okay.
So I actually sent a note from him to, unfortunately, Valen is not on the show because she could corroborate this. A message to Valen stating his long-term affection and shyness toward her. so I sent that to her, and she was sitting kind of behind me, so I was kind of keeping an eye on her. So I send that. You can see she kind of looks at her computer and she goes, "What?" So anyway, I then let her know, and so we had some fun at his expense. But you have to be careful with your equipment at these conferences, folks.
One, I will not sit beside Robert. Two, heck, I know I'm not going to leave my thing unlocked when he's around. Anyways,
let me also comment, because you gentlemen do not know, but women's clothing does not lend itself well for pockets and things to place your phone in. They make it very difficult to have anything.
That is a personal choice. The fashion versus functionalities spectrum there.
Actually, I saw a woman. They now have what's called a phone purse, or what she called it, a phone purse. It just literally is a sleeve that holds the phone with the strap, and like you said, the credit card. I had never seen something that small where it's just literally the phone and the credit cards and so on. That's pretty cool. But then again, from a safety security issue, it's also probably something somebody can grab or snap off of your. It says there's no real good solution for this. As long as we carry these blocks around saying this is what it is.
Pocket.
And
Lauren, it's just one of those.
It's a great way to introduce our new sponsor, and Lauren will put a link into Louis Vuitton. And it's available for only, $3,700, and just click on the link, please.
I do. One thing though, Stephanie, is like with the Apple Watch, I really have come to rely upon this as being my second savior when it comes to. I don't now sometimes like when I walk out at night the watch is the phone. It's my wife can get me on it and so forth, and I don't lug my phone around near as much as I used to, and I can find both either way, and it's kind of. I don't know, just it's turned into that convenience. Hopefully, Apple will go over and make sure that with the implants that we don't need to carry a phone anymore because we'll just have a brain, little chip in our brain or something. But yeah, no, it's funny as long as we still have to carry those things around. There's always going to be this, and the more we rely on them is crazy. I mean, literally, it's our method of payment, it's our identification, it's our boarding pass, it's everything. It's all that kind of stuff. Hey, with that in mind, so as a closing for the conference, was there anything? I mean, the other negative I have to say is that last week talked about the fact that Google was kind of like a meh. There was nothing really talked about by Google. It was great that Google was on the docket, but from what everybody told me from a feedback point of view, there was like nothing was said.
I missed that one. That's when my phone was lost.
I didn't see it.
So.
Oh. But was there anything that popped up that you go, oh, that was pretty cool, that surprised you in any way?
I was happy to see PR on the docket. I don't think it was, I think it was some good insight. I would like to have heard more actionable things, but I was happy to see a PR related thing on the document because I think PR is change, and what how you define PR and how you can leverage PR has changed. But
yeah, and really the PR, and tying it into social and just taking it more holistically, I think is a great idea.
Is it just because
and
Robert
with the
has to
Adrian
move?
Awards to tie things in more to again get more of the PR folks from the night before for the conference. So
Robert, just so you know, you're not moving. You get this funny little face that you're frozen on, which is
I'm
actually
frozen?
good. Yeah, you've been frozen. We can hear you fine, but you just kind of have this little puckery face.
really,
I mean, you're cute and all, but just
I'm moving. I'm moving here, so I don't know.
no, well, first we saw
live
your
web-
floor, so I'm wondering if
live
there's a camera
webinar.
issue.
Live webinar is not playing nicely with Chrome or with Oh, I've got a flashing red. What is this?
Okay. Anyway, so
you'll figure it
Well,
out.
that in
I don't
mind.
know. We'll figure it out.
Robert, you can stay frozen. It's okay, dude. It's all right. You're cute and all. It's great. It's not an embarrassing shot much that you're stuck at, but it's okay. So a little bit about what's coming up for you, Kat. I mean, with the conference, I mean, you're putting all this stuff together, and thank you. I get to go over and play with you in Orlando. Thank you.
Actually, Lily as well.
Yeah.
Was,
Yeah, it's going to be
I
fun.
mean, the same panel Susan Berry's going to be on. Shout out.
Yes. Oh, that's great. Yes, I mean, folks are talking about it. Very excited about that.
Yep.
Yeah, I think once I saw that Lily and Lauren were going to be on the same panel. I have not worked with Susan Berry before, but I think Steve has my education manager, our education manager, for webinars. But I was contemplating for a second if it was going to turn into like this cat and mouse thing, like the whole way through. That well, I know Lauren, so I'm just gonna run over him. And there's payback for always talking over me in the show. Yeah.
No. Actually, I'm when I saw her on it and everything, I'm looking forward to the fact that we're going to have some really solid points. Like it's not this head bobbing. Oh yeah, whatever they said, I agree with. Those panels are the most frustrating for me in the world, where everybody's just bobbing heads, going, "Yeah, I agree with them," and I can add this a little bit more, and then the next person says, "Yeah, I agree with them," and I can add this a little bit more. It's like, no, we're going to be able to do some pretty
difference
cool.
of opinion.
Yeah,
unique content. And one of the other presenters is I want to make sure I say her last name correctly, but Jeremy Pinkerton, who's with Anthony Malfiore of Hotel Impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So they're working with us, but she spews revenue management in an amazing way. You get interested and very captivated by it. So we have a really great lineup. All of our sessions do, but similar to what Stephanie was saying, since we have Lauren on this one of the best sessions we will have.
It'll be one of the more energetic ones, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
no, it'll be good.
Are you bringing anybody to haggle you in the audience and ask like 16 questions back to back?
It's an open challenge. Bring it on.
So all the viewers that are on, Lauren's looking for hagglers.
Come on, bring them on. You can't do it if you're not expecting for it to be done to you, kind of thing. And I always approach, and then do this when I ask questions, is okay, you're on stage for a reason, so I get to ask you questions. Because you're the one that's conveying the information, so I get to ask those kind of questions, which are really long-winded, and yeah.
Really long-winded. Yes, we're in the midst of finalizing our speakers, but this year one of the things we are doing that is brand new, never been done before by AHOA, is we are having an investment conference within our convention. So we've dedicated half of day one of our education sessions to AHOA's Investicon, first ever. So we're looking at right now we're finalizing the speakers and what the overall look will be. But there's going to be some case studies of an acquisition project, a development project. There'll be a panel on investment strategies, an industry update of just what the investment climate is looking like. So we are hoping to establish ourselves in that space. But also for those of you that have attended the AHOA conferences in the past, oftentimes our content kind of stayed at that 101, 201 level. And we wanted to offer something that's a little more sophisticated as our members have evolved and are looking for more challenging content. So we're hoping to meet that need with this.
That's very smart, very smart. Because it is, we've actually, ironically, because of what Holly and Dan Waxman are doing with HSMAI, we've had the discussions like we have to advance it off the mark. If anything can be said about the conference is there seems to be repetitive topics different faces, different people, but same context. You got to understand the value proposition of revenue and marketing, PR, whatever, sales, but it never gets past the point of the introductory level. It's always talking about the necessity of it, but they don't talk about the methodology of it. And it needs to be, we need to bring into context a more advanced conversation for those who, as you said, are doing it, that have matured into the space, and they're needing the next level of understanding or the next iteration of what they need to do. So it's very smart that you're putting that into the context of the conference. That's smart.
Yep, absolutely.
Kat,
Yeah,
were you and the AHOA team at Alice this week?
There was a AHOA team there, definitely. I know Rachel Humphrey, our COO and VP of Franchise Relations, as well as Cecil, and our officers were there, and some board members as well. I have not gone, but actually that's a great point. It was attending the Alice conference that we saw that there was not a huge population of AHOA members there, but there's such good content. So we were also hoping to kind of bridge that gap and might end up driving some more attendance to the Alice conferences. However, in the meantime, we'll capitalize on it.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
If you want it done right, you do it yourself, right? So.
Slightly reinventing a wheel, but it's an AHOA wheel. It'll work out. One of the other things that we are doing on day one before the welcome reception, or actually on the day of the welcome reception, we offer our certificate programs. Last year, we did the MIP training. That's the Musculoskeletal Injury Prevention Program for California. Our conference was held, or our convention was held in California, so it's extremely relevant content for those of you listening in. That regulation required all housekeeping staff to go through MIP training, or injury prevention training, and it has to be done every year, and it has to be recorded. So the whole process of it needed to be explained to the owners as well as their staff, as well as the actual training needed to be implemented. So we offered the training at our conference on that first day. So it was a really big hit, finding something that was locally applicable, and then marketing it. Just the certificate programs, at least 2 of them, we usually offer 3, will be open to everybody in the area, not just those attending the conference or AHOA members. We offer the human trafficking awareness training in that format as well, because you see the need. The idea is really to gain the exposure, not make it, an exclusive type of content. But this year for Florida, we are partnering with, or working with the Florida Lodging Association and Restaurant and Lodging Association, and putting together some programming. We're still in the midst of finalizing it, but we're looking to offer their top training programs, which would be the implicit bias, unconscious and implicit bias, along with like the hashtag Me Too, and a Gen Z training on how to work with them, the Gen Z population within your hotel, and then also as guests. So all of them, you walk away with a certificate of completion. Folks like tangible things. It incentivizes them. So it's also something you can, post on your LinkedIn afterwards, or share with others. Hang it in your office in a lovely frame,
I'd be curious to do the Gen Z training myself, because I struggle with some of the boxes that people get put into, including myself. I'm technically born in 81, so I'm a millennial, and I feel like I don't identify with the millennial, but it's you have to walk a fine line to make sure you're not stereotyping in the wrong way, I feel like.
Well,
Robert's Gen
I
Geezer.
feel very, very old. Am I frozen again?
Yeah, you're frozen again, which is okay because you're Gen Geezer.
I want you to know, I graduated from college in 1981.
That's okay.
That's okay.
I'm learning from you all the time, Robert.
That's right.
Yeah, it's all good.
I'd already been drinking for 3 years.
From a conference perspective, Kat, when you're looking to solicit people for participation, obviously AHOA has its own following for its own reasons, and people come for the things you put out as outlines. How do you expand that audience? How do you look at making people more aware of the value proposition of what AHOA is doing in these conferences beyond the membership perspective?
And when you're saying sourcing, as in deriving our content and sourcing the speakers?
Yeah, and also from that focus, how do you get people that aren't as familiar with what AHOA does, or as a participant of AHOA, to be interested in what you're doing? How do you expand that voice?
So I'd probably say the easiest way to bridge that is going for what is hitting the pockets of folks within our industry the biggest. Either it's going to hit them with potential lawsuits that we see on the rise, or it has with things that we're already seeing happening with brand changes and PIPs coming up, or different compliance and regulations that have to be implemented by a certain date. But really, it's keeping our finger on the pulse. Things like this, actually, the list that Robert sends us, I share with our education team because it's all really great content related to the industry and it's relevant. But with that, we use data analytics of what's going on in the industry, what we hear from our attorney partners, from member calls that we get in here. So once identifying where the demand areas are, we produce content on that and source the best subject matter experts that we can get. And we use the content and the names of the individuals to really market. So one, it lets the non-AHOA world and AHOA world know what we're doing, but leading with the fact that we have the content that they need for their businesses or even their personal development, and that we have qualified speakers that will be able to touch on all the topics they need, but also address those questions. You were mentioning earlier how well Stephanie did with the Q&A. When I'm sourcing speakers, that's one of the biggest parts that I look at. Yes, you can easily practice what you're going to say, but that Q&A can really throw you for a loop. And like, you're perfect at doing that. You're like, what is the biggest loop I could throw in this moment? So you really need to have someone with experience, and the Q&A is where they're on the chopping block, essentially, and your audience can tell whether or not they're
yourself or not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that makes a difference. So over the years, we've done a great job of drawing a very defined line in the sand between vendors and pitches and true education, keeping it strictly academic. That has raised our reputation drastically, actually, by keeping those very separate. And two, by the quality of the content in our speakers. All our speakers are open, as you've seen, Lauren, to communicate after the session that they speak on. So they prove themselves to be resources in addition to just knowledge and content experts.
Well, because I mean, again, it sounds like overflattering, but your organizational skills as to how you produce your conferences for any time I've gotten to participate are absolutely outstanding, because you don't leave it to the whims of choice. You don't leave it. You have a purpose, what you put stuff together with. You have a direction you want the conversation to go, where so many other conferences I get invited to be a participant in, sometimes they're like, what do you want to talk about? Or, we think we might want to be doing this. And it's so rambling in some ways. And then, obviously there's also the follow-ups where, you never miss the fact that you have the decks already before they present, where sometimes some of the other conferences tend to be a little loose, like you never get them, even if we're told you're going to get them, and they don't even get reviewed before the person goes on stage. And all of a sudden you're sitting back going, this is not what they were supposed to be talking about. And they're off on their sales pitch on a stage, So you guys never have those problems, because as soon as you say, hey, congratulations, you're being invited, boom, this is what's going to happen next. Boom, this is who you're going to be working with. And it's awesome, because it takes the stress off of it, because you know the direction you want us to go. You'd say, this is what you have to work with. This is who you're going to be working with. This is when we need this. And you feel, okay, good. This is all the stuff that makes conferences so successful with you guys.
Well, and actually a question to Kat. So how far in advance do you require the decks that are presented?
We usually do it for the convention, just a little over 30 days. The only one that we accept same week is the industry data, because we want the most current data possible. Right. But otherwise, the content for the other ones, there's no reason 30 days in advance it wouldn't be relevant at that time. And honestly, most of the sessions don't really have a PowerPoint. Often the slides, the panels are just headshots on a slide. Okay. So I would say probably 25, 30% might actually have content slides.
You have time for legal to look at them. Everybody gets their,
Well, we have a bonus with Rachel Humphrey. One, she's our VP of Franchise Relations. She oversees education. She's our COO, and an attorney. so a non-practicing attorney. So
There
I
you
That
go.
helps.
do in-house. So
Yeah.
reviewing, it's always a legal eye in
You
addition
may
to
want to rephrase this particular point. Yes. No, that's great. I spoke
yeah.
at the National Association of Corporate Directors last fall, and yeah, it's amazing the difference for kind of the typical hotel conferences versus kind of the professional organizations. Put the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, I should say Focusrite. Just a plug for that conference. I mean, that review is pretty thorough. And we give the speakers a lot of input. And when they start doing sales pitch stuff, you just go, no. And they go, well, no, we really want to. It's like, no, that's not it. We'll pull you off of you can't do that or whatever. And
There have been some egos hurt by that where I have never had somebody correct me. Well, if your commas are incorrect, buddy, if you spell a word wrong, I'm sorry for
right.
reviews
Yeah.
before.
You go, well, it's a first time for everything.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
And what's funny is those are often the educators or the ones that produce these things frequently. But back to what you were saying, Lauren, it means we're also doing a very good job that you think we have never encountered the issue of people sliding in their own slides or trying to promote themselves or, hey, we didn't, we deleted that slide. How did it get back in?
Yeah.
There's, I wanted to just update my presentation. Can I give you the new one? On the day of.
Yeah.
We definitely get those. We just do our best to,
Well, I've yet to see it. You guys do a phenomenal job. It's and that's it. But I think the key element that that when you were talking about how you did this, you look for content experts. So often these conferences are looking for paychecks or checks,
sponsors.
Yeah.
Oh yes,
that's the word. And a lot of times not the most qualified person sitting on stage when they're doing that. They're there because their relationship value or what have you, or they're talking about something that their team did but not they themselves, so they can't do like what Stephanie knocks it out of the park with Q&A, because they don't know what's beyond what they were told to say because they don't do it, so there is that defining difference. And for you to use that as a criteria, that's outstanding, because it is truly the testamental to have sit in front of a room full of people and not know what's coming.
Yes, and definitely engagement as well. Oh, well, we definitely want to set our speakers up for success. It's a reflection of how our department functions and the organization overall. And I mean, we try to get our kudos everywhere we can. But in some of our surveying, we asked members how they find out about our events and different things going on. And the number one response is always word of mouth, even though we have so many emails and social media posts, WhatsApp. I mean, we go through so many different channels from our PR and communications team. But at the end of the day, it's still word of mouth. So that includes industry partners and the folks that we work with to our members and our non-members. So the way we treat our speakers will reflect in how they speak about us externally.
Yeah.
But I also think the AHOA convention, and feel free to correct me, but just based on my old company and things like that, I feel like it's also a networking convention, just like HSMA is a part networking for me. I feel like AHOA has a very large networking component in terms of owners getting together and sharing notes and things like that as well.
Agreed. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Networking is something they've also identified through our surveying as being very important to them. They like education and professional development, but networking opportunities. Similar with Alice, you see for their summer series, I've gotten the opportunity to attend those. They do a 30-minute break midday, and then there's the reception in the evening. During that 30-minute break, if you walk around the room, you hear deals taking place. You hear the beginnings, the middle, the end of a deal actually concluding. So these networking opportunities is like hitting the golf course. They're going there to make business. That's what the entire trade show is about. Little opportunities for business deals along the way. So yeah, networking is a huge aspect and a big draw. I think for folks that host events, networking seems to be very popular to insert, be it in a reception or during the breaks, and especially amongst the young professional community. They're there to grow their relationships.
I'm planning
That's why people show up. I mean, that's why they show up in person ultimately. For the content is good, but they can sometimes get that other places if they put in some effort. But to be in the in the room with the other folks is what people pay those registration fees for.
Steph, go
I'm
ahead.
planning the Cayuga Hospitality Conference. Well, I'm part planning it. It's a group of networking consultants, and networking is always people are like, I didn't get to talk to enough people, and we have like the blocks for happy hour and reception, but it seems like you end up talking to one person the entire time because you kind of get cornered or whatever, and so I'm trying something different. I'm actually doing, if you've ever done speed dating in your personal life, I'm doing speed dating for networking. So you basically get like 2 minutes 4 minutes per person. And you basically get to meet half the attendees. And it's over a beer tasting. So I'm going to hopefully it's not a crash and burn, and we try to get
you had me a beer
able
tasting.
to identify quickly.
I think it might start off real strong, by the third beer.
Right?
Do I have synergy with this person or not? Like, you can say, okay, you don't fall into my wheelhouse. We probably aren't going to work together on projects. Move on and get over it, and kind of cut out the BS and keep moving. So,
it did bring that up. There was a conference I went to that we did with poker chips. Everybody had chips. And as you talk to somebody, you couldn't hand your chip over until you introduced, basically through your nap, who you are, what you did, so forth and so on. At which point you can give each other their chip, the person. And then there was a contest in a way. Who had the most chips? Was it one winner? Who could tell the most about somebody that they had not met previous to the conference? From a stand-up point of view, where they could actually introduce and speak to that person as if they were talking to them as a sales pitch. Like, this is what they do, this is how they do it, and so forth. It was kind of fun in that sense. And it wasn't a big group. You can't do this with multiple hundreds of people, but you can do it with 100 people. We have that chance to kind of interact a little bit more. And the color chips were based on what they did. So revenue management had their chips in blues and reds, and everybody had their color chip. So that as soon as you go over and start talking about it, you had the same color chip. It counted, but didn't count as much as how many other chips you had. So the more colors you had, it's kind of fun. It was a fun icebreaker, because at that point the focus wasn't about, and I'll captivate somebody. I'll talk to the janitor if they'll listen to me. Usually I'm left with them. Like, nobody else wants to talk to me. What you doing? Hey, clean the floor.
Wow. Yeah.
I love cleaning the floor. Do you know anything about marketing? I love to tell you about marketing. Anyway. But the fun part was that the mission now was to see how many chips you get. It turned into because everybody's slightly competitive anyway.
So did you win?
No.
Oh.
No, I won the ability to talk about a person like I was their salesperson. Yes, I didn't win the most chips because I got enthralled with what this person did, and so over lunch it was like sitting at the table. I kept listening to what they were doing, and I only talked to people at the table. Where other people were getting moving around the table, our table kind of sat and talked. So there was 10 of us. I got to know everybody really well at the table, but I didn't get a whole stack of chips.
Quality over quality.
Yeah, I knew what they did, and I knew this person really well, and actually I'm working with them later on. So it was it worked out that connection happened where now we do work together, because it's like, man, this guy really knows this. It's the guy from Google, the guy that can go over and tell me how to go over and save the world. Oops, I thought it was on no disturb. Sorry about that. But yeah, it was fun. It was just a fun conference variation. So.
No, definitely.
Cool.
I think some of the other reasons folks come to ours, in addition to the networking, is the amazing Bollywood entertainment, food available all day long for your $200+ less than $300 fee. So there's a lot of perks. We pretty much have something going on every day, every hour. You want to sleep, you could sleep. Otherwise, we have something for you.
Look at Kat's face when she says that. We literally have everything. You just see the happiness of the organization to do that. We got to keep doing everything all the time. Wow, yeah, just the workload. I can see all of a sudden, boom, all this work you got to do.
The funny part is the steps. There's like a pedometer. Track your steps competition during the convention, and it's upwards of a few 10,000 steps per day. Usually it's like 100,000+ at the end of the week for our staff, especially the event staff and our membership team. But events in particular, they're everywhere.
We should have one of those little baby segways where you stand on and zing.
Oh, I'll tell you, in Pennsylvania, we did our conference. The first year I got hired, it was in 2014. But we were at the Philadelphia Convention Center. And it's a mile walk from the hotel. It's all inside too, from the hotel to the actual convention center. And along the way, you pass a FedEx store that has those little segways. And every day we're like, can we expense one of those? No, every day that halfway point is it's like a bench you can't sit on.
That's like the Detroit airport where you're sitting just like, yeah, I should have taken the train because you didn't look as, oh, it's only gate number 587 and I'm at gate 500. You know, it can't be that far. No, it is.
False. Yeah.
Well, the Orlando Convention Center is massive. I mean, Robert, is it the largest or the second largest?
Orlando?
Yeah.
Boy, I don't know. It's big. It is very large.
Thank you for that.
I don't know,
concise
Chicago-
answer.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, no, they
Chicago
keep
is
increasing them. It's like, you know, this war of who can get the most
Right.
the most space, right? So that's got to be up there. Chicago, I think, expanded.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, I don't know if Javits is keeping up in New York. I don't think so. I think they've
No,
fallen
Javits is
behind.
not. Javits, no.
Yeah.
No.
So
Everywhere
yeah,
else
they.
around the Javits is growing. But
Hudson
Yeah.
Hudson Yards. Let me tell you, that is
Yeah, that's amazing.
that area has changed. Or Chelsea Market. Yeah, actually, before Stephanie was born, 1980.
He's going to, Steph, you shouldn't have told him, you know, because now.
Yeah.
I was being quiet too.
1980, the meatpacking district had meatpacking. I did a tour of like a slaughterhouse down. I mean, it was, you know.
Robert, you were there unloading
steaks.
docks. You were selling hotel rooms back when it was New Amsterdam. Okay, so
Yeah, that's right. No. That was the great boondoggle trip from school. You got to go from Ithaca, New York, down to the New York Hotel Show, but then the other side was for a meats class, and so you had to go. We got to go to a pork slaughterhouse near Albany too on that trip. That was, kind of way out the fun times in New York.
So Robert
really
now is going to refer
horrible
everything Stephanie as before Stephanie or after Stephanie. It's going to be.
That's right. Exactly.
You know what? Usually people
Yeah.
think that I'm younger than I am, so I don't mind telling people how old I am because they usually think I'm like 25 or something. So
That's a good thing.
well,
As you get older, that's a
depends on
really,
your audience.
really good thing.
Yeah, that's always a positive for it. Hey, speaking of which, and this it kind of ties to something I want to throw into the conversation today because it has gotten to where it is right now. Conferences and so forth, attendance and driving attendance and so forth. There is always that stress of getting attendance numbers, and with what's going on right now, you know, and because we're getting conversations from hotels, I am of the potential diminishment in demand of travel because of the concerns growing out of what's happening in China. And globally now, calling it a global crisis was announced today, you know, that it's now a global thing. Is there a fallback? Is there oh my gosh, we got to do this differently because nobody wants to get here? I mean, do you have a safety net for any of the stuff that you do with the attendance ratios and so forth? I mean, that's a scary question. I know you don't have to answer it, but I'm just saying is that that's scary stuff.
I know that was to me, but I actually had a thought similar to that with the HSMAI conference being in New York. With Javits, we saw that too with the challenge of room rates locally. So if you're doing anything that's more than a day, it really is pressing on pockets. So location definitely makes a big difference. Our California conference, even how we budgeted for our speakers, is different than Florida or some of the other areas we've been in. Nashville's a little pricey too. But sometimes you can't get around that. We're getting to that point too where we're so large we can only fit in certain convention centers, and we have to rotate around the country because of the how our members are distributed. So some of it's not an easy fix. The most we can do is as we're going along, if we continue seeing attendance dropping, is to start looking at virtual options. This year, we're testing on a virtual conference. I'm sitting on, I don't know if you've heard of Matchbox, but they've been recently created and they are completely in the virtual conferencing space as providing a solution as well as helping you with the development and implementation of it. But that will be the next wave of attendance for different things. You know, folks don't want to take that time away from their business. Some of them, like our convention right now, functions as a reunion too for folks because they're not able to see each other, or that's the one time of year that they do. So they bring their whole family, and
Right.
it's a big to do. But without that aspect, they're taking time away from family, taking time away from business. So there are some challenges there. So I think virtual will ultimately be the way it ends up going. But you lose your vendors. You lose a lot of income taking away the in person. So
Yeah.
it's
And that's the key, is how you stay in the in-person. So yeah, with the families attending, I'm sure you wind up with Orlando and probably California as being big draws where, attendance picks up because people are able to kind of take their family along and extend the trip or whatever. HFTP, would always find that with high tech. I mean, always Orlando or California would always pick up versus they do okay in Austin. They do fine in Minneapolis. I think they're in San Antonio this year. And they're drawing 7,000, 7,000 people. But yeah, when they go to the other kind of the more touristy destinations, San Antonio, they might do okay. But, but some of the others like Minneapolis, it kind of drops off a little bit with just fewer people taking the family. So
Minneapolis
you've got
kind of
lots of
filled more people. I heard people are driving an hour because they couldn't find a hotel room within an hour of the city at high tech.
Yeah, there's a scalability in Minneapolis that there's still some struggles on some of the capacity issues with it. Jacksonville was Nashville for the longest time was one of those cities, and when the conference center first opened up, they didn't have enough inventory in market to really handle the usability of the conference center, and now that certainly has changed because
and it's right down. The location of it's great and everything. Right behind the Grand Ole Opry. Yeah, they've done a great job from an urban planning perspective.
Yeah, they're very smart about that. And if you all are coming to the conference, High Tech San Antonio, I have a hotel there. You guys can stay at. It's really cool.
You have a hotel, so you're just giving away comp passes. That's wonderful.
Not you, Robert. I'm not giving you comp. Okay. Only people that aren't frozen can show up there. No.
Am I frozen again?
You've been frozen, dude. It's okay.
Well, no, I just so you know, for a live webinar, it comes up with an error box with absolutely no information on it.
Yeah. When they say user error, I mean, is that a?
No, I don't know. It is not playing nicely. Are you guys all on Apple?
Chrome.
No,
I'm on Apple.
Chrome.
Chrome?
Yeah.
Chrome.
It's
Chrome.
you, Robert.
Oh, you know what? Maybe I'll try regular Chrome as opposed to Chrome Beta. Maybe it's a Chrome Beta that I'm on. That
maybe
normally
it's
doesn't
between the
break
keyboard
things.
and the floor, Robert. I'm just saying.
But I'm on Firefox right now and it's having problems. So I don't know. I'll try it again. Yeah. I'll try it with Chrome standard. Good. I'll be back.
I want to go back to Lauren, your question about the coronavirus. And do you remember a few years ago when there was somebody help fill my words. There's a mosquito that was basically.
SARS. Not the SARS.
It was hurting like people that were pregnant.
Yeah. And it caused deformities in children. Yes.
I was living in Florida at the time. Zika. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I felt like that was. I don't think it's got as big as coronavirus, but I remember living in Florida at the time, and everyone was like, "I'm not coming to Florida. I'm not traveling anywhere in that vicinity at all," because people were panicking. Whether you're pregnant or not, you're like, "Well, if it's hurting babies, what is it doing?" People didn't really understand the long-term effects of Zika, and I feel like it had a potential to, really hurt the tourism in Florida. I don't actually even know what happened and how they got rid of it, or I haven't heard anything else about it. So maybe that's a good thing. But I know they had their first case of coronavirus here in the Pacific Northwest, either Oregon or Washington, a few weeks ago. So there's panic up here.
Yeah,
it's more of a perception issue than it is a reality issue. To your point about the Zika, because I had hotels at the time that had to deal with the diminished demand of people coming to areas, and Brazil was the one that got hurt the worst. I had somebody that had a hotel in Brazil that they just dried up. Literally, people wanting to go down there because that's the origin point of it, and they were fighting it from that capacity. But the perception was worse than the reality of it, and that created a demand cycle issue. And that's what since we're talking about conferences, why I brought it up. It's like, yes, there'll be hotel issues. I mean, I'm already having hotels ask about, what is our contingency plans? What happens if less people want to come here for no reason other than they don't want to come? They don't want to travel. It's not because of rate. It's not because of events. It's not because of weather. It's just because they don't feel comfortable traveling at this time. what do you do? And that goes right kind of at the heart of what you were asking, Kat, for topic wise as we come into your conference. Well, how do you build business when business isn't there? And then, do we turn into the educator? Can we actually be an authority to quell people's concerns as a hotel that ultimately we're trying to sell you a hotel room? So how truthful can we be about how safe it is to travel when we ourselves aren't the authority on the topic? How much do we have to rely upon outside resources and so forth? That's why I think it's going to be an awesome topic in the conference, because if we go through this and nothing happens, it may have woken some people up. If we go through this and it expands and turns worse and it actually has a ripple effect, if this is a black swan for 2020, then we're going to be smack in the middle of that conversation when your conference rolls.
Mm-hmm.
I think the key, and this just popped in my head, I think some of the key to having a successful in-person conference is that you're educating people throughout the year and that you're showing value and building value on an ongoing basis. I'm looking at going to, some conferences that no offense to WB Research. This is a money play in terms of when they run their conferences, but you don't hear anything from these organizations until it's like, okay, give us $4,000 to go to this conference or whatever.
Right.
And they're not building that value throughout the year and kind of saying, here's some learnings. And then at the culmination of it will be at the conference. So I feel like AHOA probably does a lot better job of educating, to your point, throughout the year versus maybe some other organizations.
They do. They do.
Well, thank you. And I'll say the conference content has to be different. It has to be very specific to that audience and the fact that it's in person. So, but we do utilize our webinars and different things to kind of lead up to the different events at our convention. It also produces analytics to make sure that what we put at the convention are the best topics. But I definitely agree with that. And the only thing I can think as far as if there's a virus or something else going on locally that may end up being a deterrent for folks to travel is kind of getting ahead on the messaging. I know that we've done press releases on different things when hurricanes were coming to the area. Here's some tips on hurricane preparedness. Here's a webinar we did. Here's resources locally.
Mm-hmm.
But drawing a connection to the outside world as far as perception that we're worrying the same way you're worrying. We're looking for solutions, so you don't have to. So, come, let us cradle you at our convention as best as we can.
Yeah, it's tough with a health thing when you start getting into these pandemics, because right now with the coronavirus, and those are calls on. Reason I was late with some investors. It's very, and nobody knows where it's going, right? Because the Chinese government did kind of downplay it at the beginning, which is a huge mistake. This kind of, they didn't learn from SARS, right? And they did it again. And now that even the World Health Organization is figuring out, hey, this has a 2-week incubation period. First, they didn't think it was passing from human to human. Well, that's now happening. That's happened in Illinois now in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks. And even the airlines. First the State Department came out and basically put it at a level 4, which is the same as their advice to U.S. citizens to travel to Afghanistan or Iraq, right? They've now said that for all of blanket for China. Just don't travel there, which is fairly severe. But you look at the airlines and you go, well, United is cut down a few flights, only February 1st through 9th. Delta has gone all the way to the end of April. Now, again, they're smaller. They don't have quite the same thing, but I think they've cut out almost half of their flights, and American's somewhere. Actually, American is only doing it from Los Angeles to Beijing and Shanghai. Right. So they aren't doing some other one. And you're like, well, wait, they're still flying from Dallas. And you're like, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Right. So really, really divergent approaches from the airlines, who certainly don't have it figured out. And certainly Delta taking a much more cautious approach than say United. So yeah, we're going to have to see over the next couple of weeks, because again, you can't mess with this. And the best answer may be, if it does get bad, don't go to the conference. That would be a really bad thing.
Right.
Stay where you are. But again, I don't know. You just have you can only control what you can control. right?
Yeah.
And so you got a situation like that, and forcing it can get you into some pretty bad, some pretty bad things if you're being too Pollyanna-ish about it. Oh, everything's fine. Come here. Well, maybe it's not fine. Sort of thing. And you're giving them bad advice, trying to drum up your numbers. You don't want to do that. Ed had a great example of some of the stuff that Flip2 had done. I think a few shows ago, about kind of talking about hurricane and destinations where you're like, hey, we're fine, but not like, don't go over there where they got hammered by the hurricane because that's, they're horrible. And now let's see if we can shift share, which again, some of the people in the back rooms may be trying to figure out, certainly from a marketing perspective. But, the messaging kind of needs to be, here's what we are, here's what we represent, and to get the folks who are available without kind of creating collateral damage, because you don't want to be the person on the news with kind of, here's an example of what not to do. That's, it's hard to recover from stuff like that.
So Kat, you made a very good point where you said we're worried about the same things you're worried about, kind of thing. That empathetic relationship of saying, look, we're not blind eye to this. We know that this has an impact potential or an influence on decision processes and so forth. It reminds me of the instances where they're like, when we went through that back in the early 2003, SARS was around and so forth. That's when sanitizers kicked in, where everybody had sanitizer stations and so forth. And that was just something that was like, hey guys, we know you're concerned about this. We've put up sanitizing stations, and just the responsiveness of saying, we know you're aware of this. We want to make this as safe as possible from what we do understand. I think that's a very strong point to make about these kind of things. And now, do you plan on doing any live coverage of the conference in the sense that you're recording all the sessions to use later, or that you can put onto a platform that would be able to be distributed? Is that some consideration that you guys are thinking about this year, or is that still a ways away?
No, actually, we've been doing just that for maybe 3 years now,
Great.
because we found that at one point we were running 3 sessions concurrently. So you'd see the members struggle looking at the 3 doors and, which one do I go to? We brought that back to 2 concurrent sessions at any given time. But still, they get that, man, I really want to go to that session. Now, that is a testament showing that what we're producing is really good stuff. But we want to make sure it gets really good stuff. So to give some added exposure to the content as well as the speakers, we've been recording the sessions and then posting to our Hotel Owners Academy, our resource library.
That's great.
Online. And we track the analytics on that too. But it's been really, really helpful, because it actually came up in our general session Q&A session that some members said, how can you put this stuff together and it's meant to help us with our businesses, but we can't see all of it at the same time. So it was a solution directly for that. So yeah, no, you can catch it after the fact, and the speakers are still accessible even after the convention.
So with the 2 sessions, do you have them, the concurrent sessions, do you have them tracked? So it's like for owners versus operator or something like that, or?
So they're all going to be owner centric, but but we do try to not have competing topics. Like I won't have human trafficking next to government affairs. But so we're strategic in the type of general topics. Robert, I don't think you were on here earlier, but we are doing an investment conference in our conference. But being that the investment piece will capture a very specific audience, the other sessions that are butting up against it are very operations based.
Right.
So your HR, your marketing, things like that. So we're hoping to capture different audiences, but all of it's going to be owner centric.
Yeah.
I speak for Lily on this, Kat. I want to apologize to whoever is going against us. Boom, mic drop. They're going to have an empty room, but yeah, just saying.
Yeah, well,
it's going to be a one-track day that time of day, because Lily now will be having the audience.
Yeah, Lauren's giving away a Tesla, a free Tesla Model 3 to every attendee.
I have ways to make it work.
You get a Tesla. You get a Tesla.
Oh, actually, you're butting up against AHOA on advocacy in an election year, but it'll be different groups.
We'll let all the advocates go. We'll take care. No worries. Literally, we'll have it. We're good. The panel we have, the topics we have. Oh yeah, it'll be spicy.
It'll be spicy.
Lauren, did you get the Octagon that you were able to get one of those to just
I've
you
already
can get
got
an
the
OTA
bench.
and a
I just need to
hotelier in
build
there
up
and
the
just let them
frame, and
fight?
it's an on open match. Yep, it's we can just get some tiki torches. and we're
Independent hotelier, brand person, OTA.
Yep, that
Maybe
is
an
stuff.
owner in there. Oh, that would be good. Yeah.
Oh, God.
Oh no, it's gonna be a lot of fun. It is incredibly good content for it. Hey, as a compliment back to Stephanie, while we wrap up the conversation for it, your Q&A, and this is why probably you get so many good speaking engagements. You're right. You had some heavy hitters in your room that you couldn't talk about their product because it's their product, but you also kept them engaged to answer into answering your question. So when because you had some hostile questions. Okay.
Oh, God.
Because there's a lot of brand frustration because
Mm.
her presentation was about what brand can do for you and so forth. I'm not speaking for you, Stephanie. I'm sorry, but so there was a lot of people going, they were fed up with something. They may not know that the VP of marketing was in front and these other people in the room. They just know that Stephanie was talking about stuff that was an angst for them, and so they were doing these hard questions. You did a wonderful job of that. I think you did 2 of those, or what do you think? And it's 5 of those. Okay, so she engaged the people in the room to answer the question and diffuse the heat of it to just objectively letting them know the solution is possible. And then how many people kept asking you which was your favorite brand? What brand does it better? I mean, almost every other question was pick your favorite kid.
Well, and I had to go through quite a few hoops to make sure to get brand approval to make sure that I wasn't saying anything proprietary. So there was one specific question about like percentage and commission rates that I had to stop. And even though I know the answer, I didn't think it was appropriate that I give the answer because given the people that were in that room. And I actually had I feel like this is kind of a semi-announcement because there was one specific brand that I knew things were happening, but again, I didn't know in what capacity I could talk about it. So since the conference, they've reached out to me and said, let's have a call.
Nice.
So I did speak with IHG since the call, and so Kat, I know a lot of your members have some of that brand, but they're basically rolling out their own field marketing program. Kind of like, so the person that worked on Marriott Digital Services has transitioned over to IHG to do something similar. So I'm excited that IHG is going to be putting more emphasis on the digital side of things. But performance marketing, as we know it, is transitioning over to Ignite. So there is a little bit of information on Merlin that you can go and you can look up Ignite. They actually originally named it Elevate, but that's already the Hilton name. So they had to change the name. But if you go check out on Merlin, you can kind of get a little bit of information. And their new Engage with e-commerce program is finally coming. But I don't think I really had that much insight into how small the digital team was at IHG. So it's exciting they're putting some focus there. So now that I feel like I can say that, because I think they were very much mortified when I said in IHG you can send out postcards to your database, but that was the best that I had at the time. And I still don't know if there's an answer for that, but at least something's coming.
And that's when you get one of the hostile questions like, well, what else can they do? What is it? And you're like, a little matrix dodge.
Yeah, those are very sensitive. When a few years back, we had a CEO panel with 10 of the brand CEOs on stage. And I mean, it was like, we were trying to solicit questions in advance, like do what we can. Yeah, exactly. You could imagine like, oh God, like what's going to come? I don't think we had any audience Q&A. Like it was.
You know what you do? You put a stock ticker, right? Like in the the monitor, so they can see what happened with their last question, have the impact on their stock price. So it's great.
All right. No, it is funny. It is funny. I complain about Google being, they didn't really add anything to the conversation. It was more of something to have on the billboard that you had Google speaking. A lot of these companies they're publicly traded. I know that if Tim was here, he'd talk about it as in defense of them, is that sometimes we put people on stage that just can't address the issues that are coming from the audience because it's confidentiality, it's business, and they're publicly traded. They can't share that kind of stuff in a public forum. So it is kind of, and it goes to a wonderful balance that you guys do, Kat. And I know it sounds like I'm just like, oh, everything's great, but you all balance that you have content people on the stage, people that can go to it. Yeah. It's like that they can talk about these things. Stephanie can talk about this stuff. It's not her company that, it's not, it's her company that she's talking about when she's there. She's talking about what she does, what she's working with, what she can do, running the fine line that she's not going to talk about somebody else's company, but if you put ISG in your position, they would have had just the same hostile questions and they couldn't answer any of them. At least you gave them some guidance, so.
The same with sponsors, right? They're paying for it. They don't want those, they don't want those questions. They won't take them. So yeah, you get independent folks who, can speak their minds. It's a lot better. Google though can talk about a lot of stuff. I don't think you should be making excuses for them.
Right.
I don't know who presented for them, but I think part of that also goes to HSMAI, where I wasn't on the conference committee this year, but in past years, there was always, oh yeah, we have to have a session with Google, we have to have one with Facebook, and that was about it. And they just kind of, my feeling is they may have just tossed it over to them, and it got, batted around, just given to somebody who just did it, as opposed to, can you talk about mobile or analytics or voice or whatever? And if you can, again, when you do these, and I think Kat, that sounds like what you're doing with your speakers, if you can say, this is the theme of the conference, this is what's important, here's how it fits into the agenda, and if you can provide this piece, that would be great, because you guys are leading in this particular area, that's why we've asked you to speak. Then you'll get good content, I think.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, don't expect to get great stuff out if you aren't going to put any effort in, I think.
Where's Dan? I think he might have had something to do with it.
Yeah.
Let's get up Dan. Yeah.
Dan, where are you at?
I don't think he was. I don't know if he was the chair. He's the chair of the marketing advisory board. I don't know if he's the chair of the
Hey,
conference.
buck stops with the leadership. That's what I say. He's in charge of the board. It's his fault.
Yeah, that's right. But again, and the way they break it out is there will be individuals from the committee who are responsible for working with those various groups and to develop the various sessions and sections and make sure that they follow up. And again, if those folks drop the ball, you can wind up with a crappy session, which is not great.
Out of respect for your work that you did on this, Robert, since it was 1:20 in the morning, you dumped the list out because you were working on it late last night.
Well, you got to get late breaking news, Lauren. And again, there's more. I know Lauren wants to get the news out earlier, but there was stuff breaking this morning that I go, oh, I would have replaced that one with that. At some point you gotta,
You just got to let the list go. Yeah, you just got to let it launch. But no. We didn't get much to it last week because we did talk.
You
a lot
didn't
about
do it at all, except for I think you mentioned.
I was trying to be soft with my co-host that
I watched the show.
That we never touched the dang topic you sent out. We hit the rut row and we hit the boop. So we did.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe not the.
Forget the top story.
The top story. Which, by the way, Mr. Robert, what was your top story this week?
This week, I just thought it was actually a couple of them. One, Marriott signed 815 hotel deals last year. And you kind of go, wow. It was 136,000 rooms. They've got 500,000 rooms in their pipeline, right? Because in their about 1.4 million rooms now. But you look at that and you go, wait a second, 136, that's 10% portfolio growth, which is pretty healthy. The second one was Hilton, who was touting, hey guys, we got 6.6% net unit growth. And it's like, hey, guess what? Marriott's beating you by, a 50% factor. That's not good for Hilton. So everyone who was kind of going, hey, Marriott has too many brands, it's big, and they're starting to cannibalize. Hilton's keeping in their swim lanes. Now with Hilton starting to have these brands, I think that that war is going to escalate.
Yeah, it sounds like they're going more international too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think what was interesting, I don't think I knew the figures. Both of those articles talked about how many total hotels each have, right? And Hilton had theirs, 7,000, and Marriott's at 6,100. Is that right, Robert?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah, 6,100, I think, for Hilton, and Marriott's like 7,300, something like that.
Okay, maybe I got them backwards. But I wasn't sure up until comparing those two articles how close they were in terms, being plus or minus what 900 and some hotels. I feel like they were closer than I thought they were in terms
Oh,
of pricey
yeah.
hotels.
Well, but again, Hilton is just under 1 million rooms. I think they're. Oh, actually, I can tell you, it's about 971,000, where Marriott's at almost 1.4 million. So, yeah, it's a pretty big spread, because it really does come down to the rooms, because you get a lot of little whatever, be it Fairfields or Garden Inns or something like that may be small, but the key is how many rooms do you get, and that's who wins, I think, and that is now that's the battle, and I don't think there's any abatement. Again, you look at this and you go, another article in there was basically STR. They're starting earlier, I have to say, and I have friends certainly at STR and CBRE and all these places. They come out with their forecasts, and every quarter they roll them back, right? So STR was exceptionally early. Their November forecast for 2020, they've already come off of it, and they weren't even to the end of January. So they're saying flat growth in terms of occupancy and RevPAR. So you go, wait a second, with all this growth in terms of and again, that's really for the U.S., but I think around the world, and now with this going on in China, don't expect a huge spike. It's going to be very interesting to see how much share these mega brands wind up aggregating.
That brings over to the other one you had in the brand forecast. I mean, obviously with the slow to no growth, but we're seeing the supply chain still grow. It's always the rubber band effect we always face as an industry. When demand starts growth, then we can yield on rate and RevPAR and everything else. And then there's the pause. Do we start building new hotels to fulfill the demand? And then we do. And then, of course, the demand slacks. And then all of a sudden we have oversaturation of supply. From an owner, I mean, Kat, you're going to be facing these conversations probably in the conference as it goes forward, with the flat to no growth.
I was like,
Lily, look, I have a perfect position. I would rather say, as soon as somebody asks one of those nasty questions, I'd be like, Lily?
Yeah, but of all those new contracts signed, we've talked about it before. Like, how many of those, when it starts getting bad, how many of those are truly going to come to fruition because they can't get financing?
Right.
I mean, or how many of those are going to sit in a holding pattern for 2, 3, 5 years before they can actually start development? So,
right. From a personal interest for me, I'm going to be chasing down your content, Kat, at the conference of financing that's not branded. What topics and conversations are going on with that? Because we went through one of the most prosperous long growth periods in history, Robert. I mean, we had the longest growth period in history.
Oh, I've got to think, for this,
So
certainly without a recession, with some sort of disruption, like a recession or something.
And we still couldn't get off the mark that most hotels have to first be brand, or builds have to first be brand for finance to go through, compared to people building independent hotels without having to make it a brand to get the financing. So we went through a golden period of doing that, and we still didn't get off the mark. How's that ever going to happen for a down market or a neutral market for anybody to grow hotels that don't have to have a flag over their head? And I don't know if there's enough conversation about it. So I'm really, when I come to the conference, which is the super happy part, being able to run around and listen to people and get some brain food, is where's that conversation? Is it even a conversation? Is it a frustration?
Oh. The owners are having that. The owners are having that conversation. I mean, when I was at the Dallas Hotel Conference last fall, they were definitely squawking about the growth of these brands and kind of the impingement that they're getting in terms of, hey, we had this, and now all of a sudden there's this new thing or a soft brand or something that, yes, to the letter of the agreement does not violate it, because here's the fence that was built, but all of a sudden, it's the neighbor's tree is grown over your fence, sort of thing, and you can't really cut it down, right? I mean, it's just like you're kind of stuck. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, Marriott, I think the classic example will be New York City. You've still got some pretty good supply growth going there. Marriott's got 100 properties. Hilton only has about 15 or something like that.
Yeah, but they have battleships there.
Oh yeah, no, they've got some big ones. Yeah, but still, that differential. The big question, it's not if, it's when the downturn occurs, because markets can't go up forever. Can those brands legitimately feed the feed all the kids that are relying on them, right? Especially when they don't let them have their own websites and they've locked in all the channels into into kind of their own their own little ecosystems. And all of a sudden, if you can't generate demand because of what the value the brand brings, a reckoning occurs. I don't know. So
Go ahead, Kat. You were going to say something?
Oh, I was going to say, also like the major areas that you're seeing supply coming into the market are also high areas of supply for the home sharing groups too.
absolutely.
So your competition is going up right away,
Mhm.
along with the supply coming into the market.
Sure.
And as I always say with that is dynamic supply.
Yep.
And dynamic supply is the enemy of revenue management because you just don't know. They don't have any sort of quality stats on what kind of stuff comes in and how it flows. They're starting to, but it's nothing you could build a solid forecast on.
Lily pointed out calculations saying that attrition was around 20% from what the CVB from Phoenix calculated as an answer to some of what we were talking about for how much actually comes through and stuff. But I wanted to show you something, tell you something from the Airbnb thing that just happened with me from Vancouver. That is a new tool in the toolbox of Airbnb and VVRBO and strategies. Is their reactionary to changes in demand to their market is really slow. And they really shot themselves in the foot when all of a sudden demand, because Vancouver's a big China gateway. Now it's slowed down when they went over and took the CEO of whatever that company was and expedited them out and all this other stuff, and it hurt their demand. Yeah.
Oh, Scotia.
Yeah. So, but it's still a gateway city for them, for Canada. When this hit, all of the Airbnbs, because of demand at the time, refused to change their cancellation policies, or very few of them did. And so they got really backlash socially on how mad they were at so many Airbnb hosts and so forth that refused to let people off the hook of cancellations because of a change in demand to the market. And so I always look at when you look at AirDNA, that platform that tells you all the data about Airbnb. I always look at the calculation of demand window and the bar that they have about the rules, how strict they're holding their cancellation policies, and they get very bravado. They have a lot of bravado when they feel like they get a strong, solid demand with a lot of these new hosts or single hosts that they really ramp up their penalties for cancellations. But they don't take them away when the demand begins to go down. They don't get accommodating. And so it's kind of a neat tactic to know that if you're going to have fluxes in demand or there's a temporal demand cycle, then you can be more in tune with talking about your ability to cancel, your cancellation policies, your flexibilities, your inventory variations. And it really resonates well in those circumstances. And I had never really used it to that finite of a tool before. So just one of those little things that just recently happened. I'm like, that's a little bit of an underbelly for Airbnb inventory is they don't react well to these flexes as much as we can. And they got caught and they got a huge negative backlash.
And there are two areas where the hotel industry has really had its head in the sand completely with short-term rentals. One is certainly the whole cancellation issues and the penalties, and the other is the whole quote resort fee and mandatory fee things, where again the industry has been fighting this and it's just stupid. It's drip pricing. It's horrible. It is the antithesis of anything you want to do from a marketing perspective. But you look at it for short-term rentals, there are huge cleaning fees and things like that, which wind up disadvantaging the hotels. I was just looking in San Antonio. They have some really great Sonder properties that are downtown, and you see it and you go, wow, $100 a night for a beautiful, it's really close to, Riverwalk and Convention Center, but it's got a $95 cleaning fee, which again isn't revealed until the end of the process. And it's just like hotel industry, wake up, go say, here's the price you're selling it for. Forget the whole drip pricing thing, which does work, but is certainly a negative for consumers. And guess what? You'll be able to compete more effectively against the short-term rental players who are basically using this, these mandatory fees to compete very effectively against you because again, it works. So.
We also, and just speaking to that, from a competitive point of view, we've been having huge success in adding food credit to direct channel. Two things we use as tools now for direct channel.
Yeah.
One is we waive the facility fee if you direct channel, which is a value proposition to direct channel growth. And the other is that we also go over and give food credit if we have F&B operations in it as a part of booking direct. We give $20 to $50 depending upon what we're trying to leverage. That's included with them booking direct.
Yeah.
And that there's a huge influencer. I mean, you have your limited service properties that have their breakfasts and so forth. And speaking as a road warrior from time to time, those breakfasts are tiring. It's the same turkey, sausage, rubber eggs thing, and you end up as though it's nice that you have it down there, but you end up wanting to find something local. So these are value propositions that even if your hotel doesn't have food and beverage, we actually have one hotel that went to the restaurant adjacent around the corner in New York and worked out a deal that this is your credit voucher to go around the corner to this little deli and get food.
Absolutely. And those are great tools to use. Again, bundling those into resort fees is just garbage.
Yeah.
Because it's not a benefit, right?
No.
It's just, and Kat, for your conference, if you want anyone to debate, I have said, I will debate anyone, any place, anytime on resort fees, and they will be vanquished.
Okay. We want a resort fee duel.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And what my kind of little joke is, I say I'll do that anytime, any place, anywhere. And once they agree to it, I then tell them that, oh yes, and I require first class airfare, 5-star suite hotel accommodation, and Michelin, 3-star dining. And they get really pissed off that they didn't know about that up front when they agreed to it. So I don't know. So.
And only green M&Ms.
Yeah, exactly.
On what Lauren, on what you were just saying, we actually have another session that we're offering called "Increase Guest Satisfaction Without Increasing Expenses: How to Best Utilize Third-Party Food Delivery Services."
Yeah.
So oddly enough.
Yeah. See, I follow the great minds. It's not. I'm just stealing ideas from everybody. It works out well for me. But no, it's the whole ghost kitchen thing is a very powerful thing. Yes, and especially if you don't have strong food and beverage within yourself, and or you don't have the ability to scale it, then these delivery services and relationships, giving credit vouchers, we do that we do that as a credit value for direct channel that they can choose from, that they get their delivery service for free of their choice, and we give them the 3 that we are already in relationships with, whether it be Grubhub, Uber Eats, or whatever, that we waive their delivery fee if they choose that as their option for direct book. So, and you can do that as a simple slider on your own website. You don't have to get these third-party companies to come in and build this for you. You can put this into your sites and have it work. I'm sorry, Stephanie.
Again, though, for hoteliers, watch out. Ghost kitchens are a double-edged sword. Yeah. If you have your own food and beverage operations, and again, maybe you're happy running a room business where you're just providing guest rooms and you've leased out all your space and you don't care what they're doing, and food and beverage just isn't an item for you. But to differentiate, I mean, Hilton just came out and said, hey, they're going to start focusing on food and beverage to differentiate their hotels. And it's like, no shit. Because what did they do at the New York? Oh, we're going to get rid of room service. Well, guess what? People don't like paying $37 plus a delivery fee for a continental breakfast. You've made it zero value. You look at guys like Richard Branson, who's sitting there going, it's not cheap, but it's reasonable. And you kind of go, hey, you know what? It's more convenient for me at my Virgin Hotel to go get a decent room service meal delivered hot in a timely manner, and it's good, and it isn't costing me a fortune. That's fantastic, right? And hotels can successfully, differentiate themselves with that. So gotta be careful. If you want to level the playing field and go, hey, Uber Eats or Grubhub or whatever Ghost Kitchen can go deliver to a Sonder or an Airbnb or any generic lodging unit anywhere in the city, that's great. Or are you going to differentiate yourself through service and food quality? So
when I was in Philly, I did Grubhub for the first time. The restaurant called me and was like, your food's ready, but we don't have anybody to deliver it. Do you want to come pick it up? And I was like, the whole point is that I want you to bring it to me.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, it's ready now. And I was like, well, I don't have
so I'll get it cold. Yeah.
It's all kidding.
I'll tell you a quick old story to tell you how old I am. I came up through hotels and food and beverage, and when I got my first regional position, I was walking around the flagship hotel. This is in Houston, and the chef was walking me around, and we walked through the banquet kitchen, which was a huge kitchen, the restaurant kitchen, one of the two restaurants, and then there was this small little kitchen off to the side that was stacked full of boxes. And I was asking, "What that's?" Well, that's our old room service kitchen. We use it for storage now because we don't do room service anymore. So why don't you do room service? And the chief engineer was with us doing the tour too. And we walked down the lobby. He says, "That's why." And he points over, and you see Pizza Hut delivery going up the elevator. Now this is where my age thing comes in. I says, "Oh, we're going to change that." So what I did was, I told the chief, I said, "I'm going to make a big sticker of a big pizza slice that says we guarantee we have the best pizza." Or you can order from your favorite pizza and we'll buy it for you. And I want you to slap it in the yellow pages in the room over the pizza places. When they still had yellow pages, you had to use the phone. Slap it over that in the room, and we're going to make the best pizza. And his name was Dominic, so we called it Dominic's Pizza, just because he's the one that put out. So. And what we did was there was no delivery fee. There was no automatic gratuity. It was a little bit cheaper than every other pizza choice because we researched the prices on everybody that was in the market for it. So we were a little bit less than everybody. And we made sure we had the best variations of all the different pizza places that were out there at the time. And people get mad. "I don't like the pizza. I want to get a free pizza." And it's like, yeah, but you ate the whole pizza. So no, you liked it. But all of a sudden the room service kitchen was the hottest kitchen because it was just nothing but pizzas all the time.
Yeah.
And then we started making the menu a bit larger. So it is about listening to the guests and say, "Hey, look, I don't want to pay, like you said, $35 for a continental breakfast that's cold." No. And the other thing I hope that hotels learn is quit taking the coffee machines out of the rooms. I do not like going to the lobby to get coffee.
Right.
I know it's supposed to be really good, coffee, but I'm not a happy person first thing in the morning until I have coffee. And I don't think anybody wants to see me look like that when I go down to the lobby in whatever I plan on wearing to go get coffee.
Perhaps, maybe we've stumbled upon something, Lauren. Maybe looking at what your guests need or are interested in might be something to consider in terms of the services you provide. I don't know. Sounds kind of crazy. We're getting out there.
Yeah, but no, to your point, Kat, the going outside of yourself and connecting with local businesses and offering value propositions associated with the guest experience is definitely a resource that is underutilized and is very helpful in making people make decisions about staying with you, because they might look and say, "Oh, you don't really have a restaurant." Yeah, but we have these really cool restaurants nearby, and we have a relationship with them, and we're going to give you something to go there for them. So
yeah, which I would say is a stronger value proposition if you really know these guys are good, as opposed to letting them spin the wheel with Grubhub or anything else, right? And you just go, "Oh no, these guys, we work with them, and actually, they deliver quickly, or they do whatever, and to make sure you've got the types of food that your guests like. If you want a good Italian, a good pizza, a good Chinese, good Thai, whatever, those restaurateurs, it takes a little bit of effort, and you've got to keep your eye on it and make sure that they're consistent and the management doesn't change. But yeah, if you can do that, that's a huge service for your guests, especially the ones who arrive late, and the ones who can deliver late or something like that is huge.
One of the hotels I had gone to in Seattle, they also had a relationship with the local gym, so you got like a day pass.
Absolutely.
You just asked about it at the front desk. But on that, I actually have to get off and get going. I'm sorry. I did want to say that I tried to watch as many of those commercials as possible. But of course, all of the ads have ads before them, so I didn't account for that extra 15 to 20
pre-rolls,
in front of each of them. But I think the Pringles and the Kia ones were the ones that stood out the most.
Yeah,
I just Michelob Ultra, that one was funny too.
That was good.
I was going to throw that in as the Boop, but then I decided, no, the Boop needs to be the Pan Am stuff, because the Pan Am, the Pan Am kind of photos of the kind of the golden era of air travel were just terrific.
Yeah. But no, the commercials, they're fun. I mean, the Jimmy Fallon one with the Michelob Ultra is cool. I like the one they did for the Sonata or whatever it is. The Boston. where they does it's like the smart car, the smart park. That's
Yeah.
cute. Those
Yeah.
are the memorable ones, but sometimes the
Maxima.
commercials can be so funny you forget what they're actually trying to sell.
Mhm.
They get past the point of the product. It's a fine line. I mean, the creativity is brilliant, obviously, because the money that's being spent to produce these things and to display them is, yeah, you'd love to have that as an annual budget, but there's still the value proposition that has to somehow get conveyed to it. So, okay.
And
So
one travel related company doing any ad, which is pretty amazing when you consider airlines, destination, anything. And it's Hard Rock, and it's at Hard Rock Stadium, right? So
Yeah.
who knows if they swung a deal or something like that with a network going, well, we'll give you this suite or give you access this or so many tickets or who knows what in exchange to defer the cost. But
yeah.
but who knows? But
So, Kat, thank you for bringing me today. Wonderful. Thank you for being making on the show. Other than telling us more about where to find the conference if people want to go and all this other so forth, where they can also find you.
Absolutely. So anything related to the AHOA conference or even the benefits that we offer, check us out at ahoa.com, AAHOA.com. If you want to reach out to me directly, easiest way to get to me is via email at cat.m.speaks@gmail.com. One of the other things just before I head out, I wanted to mention, it is Super Bowl weekend that we're going into, and I'm the human trafficking awareness individual over here. I just wanted to mention that it is expected that around 100,000 women and children are brought in for trafficking during this time period, and it ranges to a minimum of $50,000 payout for these traffickers. The human
for the Super Bowl.
Oh, yeah, just with that, and I'm not even going to the wow situations of who's the one purchasing these folks, but the human trafficking hotline, I wanted to start saying it on the show because it's a really easy number, and there's repetition in the number, so it's easy to remember. But it's 888-3737-888. That's the number you could text as well as call. If you are heading to the Super Bowl, you see anything suspicious, by all means, call that hotline. It isn't calling the police. It's calling folks that can look into it and start keeping a record of it. Last year with the Super Bowl in Atlanta, there were actually 169 arrests related to human trafficking, and there was an increase of 23% on the hotline for trafficking instances that were called in. And with roughly 100,000 women and children brought in, there were 24 survivors that came out of it.
Wow.
Just to show that, your calls, your texts, your observations can make a difference. So if you are heading there or in the area for the Super Bowl, just keep your eyes open. You see something, please say something.
That's fantastic. And in terms of that number, I think if you need to do focus groups, see if Lauren can remember the number. If Lauren can remember the number, you're good.
I typed it.
You did it to the chat? Yeah. Oh, that's great. I should have done that too. Yep. 888-3737-888. And you did it just the right way. There's a group called Street Grace that I had seen. That's how they list the number, not 334. So that it stuck in my head better just seeing it like that. So
No, it is. I actually, because of you, I've looked more and more into it, and I want to make it a part of the perpetual conversations that we have. And thank you, because I was just going to ask you to remind yourself this is the last day of the month for this, let alone the Super Bowl thing. I didn't even know. I mean, you've talked about it before being a connection that this is one of those places and times that it gets even worse. But just to know that those numbers, and it's staggering to think that we as a cultured society have this, because that's barbaric. It's anyways, but and thank you for bringing that to our attention again for it. And yes, every show I have no problems in always bringing it up, regardless whether it's the month for it or not. So it's always
it really should be. It should kind of be 12 months. As opposed to one. But again, if you can highlight it in 1 month, that's a good start.
And the reason I have no problems with it, one, just a horrendous number, but two, is like we as an industry are an unwilling or blind eye participant in this process. We unfortunately provide the capabilities for this to happen for hotels, So yes.
Lauren personally has advised his properties that he works with to actually reduce the human trafficking market and to increase the drugs and guns market, and it's worked out well, right? right, Lauren?
It's just revenue management in a different way. It's just
It's all the channel. You got to manage your channels and your suppliers. So yeah, so that's good. So
thank you, Robert, for that kind word.
Lauren, you do great work. And it's important. So
Kat, thank you again for your time today. I hope we can make it again soon. And yeah, we'll keep the messages going for that. So, and we'll see you soon anyway in a couple of months. So
yes, definitely. And I'm sure I'll be speaking. I'll definitely be in touch with you, Lauren, and Stephanie might be reaching out to you with some speaking options. As well as Robert, this dueling concept has me thinking now on Resort Food. How do we make this happen? Should there be a ring involved? Like what?
Ooh, you borrow my octagon.
No, I don't need a ring. I just bring data.
Okay.
Hey, if any of your conferences need Focusrite, JD Power data.
And by the way, Kat, for all the talking that he does, he's spot on time on his speaking engagements. He'll drop it on the last second of the 30 minutes. If you tell me he's got 30 minutes, the man's phenomenal. For all the time he jabbers, like me, he's always on time when it comes to his speaking engagements. I don't know how he does it.
Lauren starts on time.
Yeah, I start on time. Don't end that way. Start on time. Robert actually ends on time.
Yep.
Well, we appreciate it. The start and end.
The end time is very critical, Lauren. That's just an area you can just a little bit of some tweaking there. You know,
a little fine nuance.
Areas for refinement. Yeah.
Yep. But no, thank you very much.
Everybody. And yeah, you'll see me again soon. Bye. Take care this weekend.
All right. So out of what we had on the rest of your articles, so there's actually some really good points. Actually, last week you had some great ones we didn't even get to, but the rule is we don't go backwards. So we
Nope. This is current news, and it's back in, you know, it's lost. So
since we have the pleasure of Stephanie, is there any of them that Stephanie that popped out for you in the sense of make sure we don't miss before we wrap things up?
We did my favorites, which were the Hilton Marriott one, and then I got my IHG notes in. So Robert, take it away.
I always throw in like little ones that are, again, these are things that aren't necessarily the largest and biggest stories, but they're ones that caught my eye. One is that Airbnb Experiences has added Catherine Powell to their team, and you go, and too bad Stuart isn't here to go, are we talking about short-term rentals? She was a pretty heavy hitter at Disney. She handled a lot of the Disney experiences and events and things like that. That is not any just wallflower type. That is a primo hire. And when you look at, didn't they get the guy who started Amazon Prime in there too? They have an amazing management team in that group. So I don't think you look that down and disregard them in terms of their management skill. They are pulling really good people from outside the industry. And then LVMH. Again, we mentioned Louis Vuitton earlier. They have all a wide variety of luxury brands. They bought Belmond. They brought in a new executive to head their hospitality group, who again has a very interesting background. He used to be, I think the CEO of, was he CEO or head of? I'm not sure if his marketing had a senior management position at Luxottica, who has virtually control over kind of the luxury eyeglasses and frames market. I mean, they have Ray-Ban and all the others. So again, a lot of these groups are going out to really kind of tap some top actually he was Andrea Guerrera. He was at Italy, which has done some really amazing stuff. In terms of kind of food markets, food courts, very, very successful. And then he was at the helm of Luxottica too. So these are not, kind of second tier, third tier executives. These are top drawer hires. So I would expect to see very interesting things from both of those organizations with these people in place.
Not to let go of the Airbnb conversation. There's one other thing that I've been diving into a lot of Airbnb recently this past week because of what happened to one of my markets. But for those people that are looking at what they need to do about redefining their voice in their market, Airbnb is actually a great resource. If you join their communities, or even just join as an Airbnb member, and you go in, you're seeing segmentations of things within your market that you may not be aware of. Day trips, off the beaten path. They're categorically broken down in such a way that it's a great content resource.
Absolutely.
You can take yourself and say, okay, these things affect my hotel as well, and they're already laid out. Now, I'm not saying cut and paste, but being able to identify what they are and talk to it in your own voice and your own terms as to your value proposition relationship to it is very powerful. It's almost like your own research tool where instead of having to say, oh, I'm always event driven or activities driven within my destination. I know what concerts are coming in and what events are at the complex, what citywides there are, what festivals there are, what the business cycle usually is because of weather. This goes farther, deeper, and more segmented in being able to find some really cool stuff that you didn't even, as a resident of your own destination, may not even have known about because you didn't have a personal interest or something into it. So I just say is that there's a lot of stuff with Airbnb of being in tune with it, that knowing where their weak spots are, what their impact is, their windows of opportunity, their research, their content that are valuable, again, guest-centric things. So anyway, I just want to make sure.
And it is. I mean, I can just take my experience in New York last week. I mean, you'll get people coming in, and I knew about these places because I'd lived in the city and things like that, and they've been around forever. But people will come in and go, where should we eat in Little Italy? And again, with most of the hotels that have kind of, eliminated the concierge position, or, who knows, that, you just wind up talking to a desk clerk who doesn't know and isn't trained, and they don't have even the resources at the desk to even look anything up because nobody's responsible for that stuff. You go, oh, you should try La Mila. It's great. It's right on Mulberry Street. Not real expensive. It's kind of the red check table, but really good food. And if you want a great cannoli, there's Cafe Roma. Yeah, they've been making them since 1891. And if you as a hotel can communicate those sorts of things, that's what really makes a difference in terms of somebody's stay and their memories of New York generally. I mean, they may go, oh yeah, I stayed at a really nice hotel, but boy, they tipped me off on some great, best burger, Jackson Hole, Wyoming, 7-ounce burgers, 64th between 2nd and 3rd. You can't beat it, if that's what they're looking for. Knowing the different neighborhoods or what they're doing and trying to engage with the guests and understand, hey, here's what they want to do when they're in the city. Oh, they're going to go down to Battery Park because they're going to the Statue of Liberty. Well, here's some cool places you can go on the way back if you're a Midtown property or something like that. You don't have to just Uber down there and Uber back to the place, or you could tell them how to do the subway if you really, if they really are adventuresome. But those sorts of things are what really help travelers enjoy a destination, love a place, and then recommend that hotel to their friends, right? So
we got time for the boop and the. Do you want to do the raw before the boop so we end on a high note?
I've thought for sure you were going to take the 5 most complex SEO problems, but that's okay.
No, I'll let the world figure that out. No, I didn't necessarily agree with them anyway. There's more. To me,
there may be more complex SEO problems. Yes.
Yeah,
I would agree.
It kind of goes back to one of our earlier conversations where our industry is still stuck in start. It just we get this thing where we're still on the mark of talking about what we should be aware of rather than knowing that we already they're aware of it. What's the next thing? And these reflected that in my mind, that they were talking more about, okay, yeah, they're not the duh moments, but they're the okay, yes, that's what that is. Okay,
it's a 200 level class, not the entry level one.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and it's going beyond those things of utilization, and it doesn't really address the fact of being an authority on your content and how that impacts now the search structure as to the way the pages are designed. Google dominates. You have to go through pages of Google on mobile, because mobile is the internet now. You have to scroll 8 times before you get to something that you have direct control over. In the sense, and I don't even mean direct control, mean that you can actually make that happen, except for paid placement by bidding. But your organic and so forth, before you even get to that influencing factor, you have to go through everything else Google's trying to solve for you before you get there. And to me, that's more of a complex issue at hand, as Google eating everything up and dominating and displacing OTA's value proposition and it does have a value proposition, and our own value proposition rather than being a commodity. That's the SEO challenges I find to be more is how to play in Google's sandbox to your benefit, not just to what Google uses you for. So
Yeah.
that was kind of my.
And that's Google, and maybe that should have been the Google presentation. Just say, here's what we're really all about. We're about organizing the world's information. And if you organize the world's information, then you should be the one place people should go to, and the only place people should go to. And because we have an advertising business, you can then pay to try to get in front of that traffic to try to pull some of that stuff off for you. And I think that pretty much wraps up what Google is and does. And it's interesting. I think the industry is really needing to not necessarily wrestle with it, because I think they're already at the point where they have to play with Google as effectively as possible, right? They just have to play the game and try to play it smart. But then what are you doing to kind of defend your to defend your own, and how can you get this through unpaid channels, which a lot are word of mouth and kind of networking of just human to human and not just search. That's going to be the real key. So
the Ruh-Roh is one you pointed out in your postings on social already. Anyway,
so did you do it, Lauren?
No, I
Lauren, run these, please. While we're here, I want you to run the activity tool, and we'll see who has the worst Facebook exposure.
I'm sure,
because what we're talking about is Facebook finally. They had rumored this for 9 months maybe. Basically, it's their off Facebook activity tool. Right. So these are all the sites that tie into Facebook for information. So how many sites are pulling information, basically have information about you, who are basically it's the sites that are using the Facebook advertising ID. Right. I mean, that's fundamentally what it comes down to. So mine was ugly. Mine was quite ugly because I consider myself a lab rat for this stuff. And so I don't block a lot of third-party cookies and things like that, and I just kind of see what happens because I want to see what people are doing. I had over 1,100, I think it was close to 1,200 websites that have basically my Facebook ad ID on it, which is a pretty dauntingly large number. Lauren, I'd love to know what yours is, unless you do a lot of cookie blocking.
I have 781.
Oh, see, yeah, so.
Oh, I gotta go run mine now. I didn't do it yet.
Oh yeah, you should. Well, you can't. It's real quick. It'll come right up. We can.
Yeah, it'll go for it. Yeah, I'm like I don't really turn much off. I don't. I use it for what they intend to use it for, knowing that I'm sharing more than. To me, it's like if you're going to learn it from me, then okay, great, wonderful.
Well, I just do it just to see what some of these things.
Oh yeah, it's like with Google. I mean, Google knows more about me than I do. When I laugh, it laughs and all that. But yeah, no, but I think the point that I appreciate you making with this is that we get into this routine. Like, yeah, sure, go ahead. Need a permission? Sure, allow this, allow that. Yeah. And then the next thing you know, it's like, wow, how big of a pile is that we've gone over and allowed these many platforms access to our data. Because I was a bit of I wouldn't say abuser of it, but I utilized it when they first allowed us to log in with Facebook. Mm-hmm. Facebook made the mistake of saying I could, as a marketer, choose what information I wanted.
Right.
And I could say everything. I want to know everything. And that was a mistake because be careful what you wish for. The data I was getting was useless. I had no way of using it. Yeah. Eventually, they had to start cutting it down to saying all you get is name and email, and that now it's only Facebook ID and so forth and so on. Yeah. To limit.
Well, that's so they can control it and monetize it all themselves, right? So you used to be able to get that stuff. Well, and they used to. I mean, it used to be you could get all of your friends' check-ins, right? If those friends were sharing that with you, and I think they had to be sharing it publicly. I don't think they had it where if it was shared just to a friend within friends that it exposed, but maybe who knows, right? Move fast and break things was the motto. But again, you start looking at the detail on these things, and it's a hellacious amount of information. But now that is all kind of focused into the ID, and so Facebook's the gatekeeper of all the data, and you can go pay to select and create your audiences to a fairly good degree of difficulty, and of course an anonymous basis. And Lauren wouldn't know any ways to figure out how to game a Facebook ID or a Google Ad ID to figure out who that person actually was and mapping it to your first party cookie data. That just would not be a possibility.
I know.
So
no triangulation there.
654.
How many?
654.
Wow.
Ooh.
So I don't think I won by having the most. Let's put it that way.
It's a contest of the biggest loser. Yeah.
The other interesting thing, though, which was the Rutrow, is they have a nice little thing to clear your history, and you just click the button that says clear history. But there's a little note in there that says, oh, well, that'll clear the history, but we're going to keep grabbing everything moving forward from these sites anyway.
Yeah.
We're going to go back and clear it again later. Put a note on your phone.
And you can keep clearing it periodic. Or they do have, if you drill down a couple things which aren't necessarily that intuitive, you can say, turn this off for all future tracking, right? And so you can go do that. And I think that's a really interesting fork in the road of what do people want to give up for convenience, right? And that's the whole, if groups are good at targeting, particular things that you might be interested in at the right time and are really good at that, that's very helpful and very convenient. And
I'm not worried about the list that Facebook doesn't share with you, and that is their partnership list. When Facebook a few years back first started developing data relationships outside of themselves, they're pulling information in from financial institutions, from medical institutions, from general data places to augment what they were knowing about you from your usage of them. That was the really scary list, because even after Analytica came through and they said, well, you know what, we're going to shut off some of these partnership usages to the general marketing. They didn't shut it off to their primary market people.
Right.
They didn't shut it off to their big clients. They just turned it off to most of us little people.
Right.
That we couldn't use those kind of data sources anymore to define our targeting.
Yeah, if you're Nike, you probably can still do that.
You still can do it. And
Facebook's a hunch. I don't know.
Yeah. And Facebook's going to keep the sauce behind the door for them now, that they're going to help you by their matrix of when you put an ad copy, that process that Facebook says that they have to index and begin and then open up the audience, that beyond your filter, if we find relevant filters that may be helpful to your audience, allow us to expand to those. That's where that comes in again, because then they're going to take that data and say, okay, so this marketer made this filter. Let's look at what we also know about these people that we're not letting them know that we know, and add that in there so we can expand and charge them more for exposure, because we can open up more of an audience for them. So it didn't go away. It just went away how many people could use it.
Well, and the bottom line, I mean, not to replay the 2016 election, but a major reason that Hillary Clinton lost that election was that the Trump campaign went into Facebook, and Facebook had teams, right? Their political teams go, here's how you can use the platform, because they're out there trying to sell they want ad dollars, right? They came in, here's the targeting. Trump's guys were laser focused. Clinton wasn't, right? They thought they were going to win. They weren't taking it as seriously. No, we don't have to do that. They had all the same, kind of access to the same tools and the expertise, right? Of these guys coming in and go, we will even help you, weaponize this information even more effectively, which is what, again, every marketer wants. How do I make this more effective? Make my bullets, shoot farther, faster, bring down the game that they're shooting at. But they didn't do it. So very, very, very interesting stuff on here of, where the creepy line falls and how all of this stuff really winds up panning out. So
there's the boop.
Yep. Oh, and the boop. Yeah, we didn't do the boop. The boop was just really Pan American World Airways, which was a great airline that died, what did they say, 39 years, 40 years ago, something like that. Very, very sad. That was the the premier, global airline, iconic airline, and they just had a lot of pictures of how you how it was back then in the golden age of air travel.
Before I was born.
Well before you were born. Yes.
It was pre-Stephanie era.
Yeah, I think. Well, wait. What year did Pan Am die? It may have. I don't know. I'll have to. I think they had it. If it was 30. Wait, if it was 39 years ago, was
I
that
just turned-
1981?
I just
Wait
turned-
a second.
Yeah, just turned 39. Right?
Wow, Stephanie comes into the world and Pan Am dies.
Oh my!
Hmm.
We had never seen that relationship before.
It's, But again, it goes back that there's nobody's too big to fail. I mean, you look at IBM, you look at all these companies that were once invincible. I mean, Pan Am was just, I mean, TWA, and those were just these icons of what air flight was.
Mhm.
And now poof, neither exist. And
Frontier used to serve steak and lobster. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
They had
But
great in-flight dining, but
Yeah.
no
And they
more.
used to have warm cookies too. Warm
Oh,
chocolate.
that was Midwest Express. Yes, yeah, with the
No,
warm.
Frontier did too.
Oh, that was probably after they acquired Midwest for a little
Yeah.
while, then they killed it. Yeah. I thought Frontier for a while it was like, oh my God, they've got pictures of animals on the tails and warm chocolate chip cookies. I mean, they're going to get kids who are going to be like lifetime. This is genius. That's like McDonald's with Ronald McDonald. Get them young and keep them.
one of the Adrian Award winners that was platinum was DoubleTree's Cookies in Space program. Now, I know we didn't talk about Adrian's last week. We did a little bit, and we didn't talk about this week at all. It's an interesting mix of what that has become.
Yeah.
So
what was the Cookies in Space? What was the?
That was DoubleTree's big social media campaign for last year, where they were offering. But they did this whole thing about how space is going to be really cool because there's going to be cookies in space. They're going to make cookies in space, and they did this whole social. You have to see it to understand it. It's because out of context, it's like, okay, that's weird.
Zero gravity cookies. So did they send some cookies up to have them make them in the space station or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay. So
it just, again, the only thing I'll say about the Adrians, and I say this about any awards, vanity metrics do not go to the bank.
Right.
So, you can be really excited about all the engagement stuff and the implied value proposition of the marketing and so forth. And there is value to this. I'm not discounting all of that. I'd be impressed with having some of the numbers that those campaigns had. But nobody talked about the money.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure it made money. I'm hoping it made money.
Right.
But nobody talked about what it did revenue-wise. They talked about the impressions and the implied marketing dollars of that kind of exposure and everything else.
Right.
But nobody said it produced this ROI or this kind of money.
Even ROAS,
Nothing.
Yeah.
And
and when you look through a lot of those submissions, a lot of them particularly on the performance, the metrics are trash, right?
Mhm.
And
I mean,
again, that is one of the challenges with the Adrian Awards, where the way that they are, you may have some good campaigns that wind up getting negative. They might get a silver rating or whatever they get scored doesn't qualify them for gold because that person looked at it and said, performance metrics were where somebody else goes, oh, that's so cool. They ignored the performance metrics and they wind up getting a gold or wind up.
It is a tough. I mean, I don't envy the position of getting awards for things like that, but it's just the aspect of, if I was in the C room suite talking and I had the responsibility of making a choice of spending monies to do things, it would be probably, if not the first question, the second. Like, okay, that's all great. You got 1.7 billion impressions. You got 1.8 million engagements. You had, X $100,000 shares. What did we make? What did it make?
Yeah.
Can we do the, the
Or
third question?
they track it, or even you go to the point, here's how we track it. And especially with a lot of agencies, they may say this is proprietary information, but they can say that we wound up doing this and it triggered a such and such return on ad spend or something like that. But yeah, most of them don't do it. Quite frankly, a lot of those submissions, especially from some of the larger agencies, are just templates, and it's literally a replace the, it's like a global search and replace of the client name, right? And just here's it, and here's what we did, and kind of the same goals and the same objective. Because I've judged those for long enough to just go, oh my God, this is, and you really see it when you're a platinum judge, where you get all the gold submissions and you go, wait a second. And I remember picking up a couple of things going, wait a second, these are identical except for this. And it's like, should we penalize them or just take it for, do each of these clients know that they had like identical, they were just getting cookie cuttered out? I don't know. But
hey, if it works for one client, do it for another one.
That seems to be the objective of a lot of these.
If it works, then
certainly in the website development realm, there's one major group who I am absolutely convinced their business model was to find a client who would do a custom site and then sell it to everybody, right?
Oh yeah.
And that was it. Over and over and over.
Over and over again.
Yeah. Well, we're here past the 2-hour mark, and thank you for both the time and the topics, Mr. Robert. Thank you for the topics as always. And Stephanie, thank you for time. We have to pick on, let's see, Tim's in the witness protection program again. Ed is in jail again. Stuart, what's Stuart's problem?
Lily, I heard, had coronavirus, which is, I'm very
Holly, she's got the fungus of cold again. Stuart, he's probably just in some drunken stupor. Yeah, that's it. He couldn't sober up for the show. And Lily legitimately has laryngitis, so she can't talk.
Hey, you know what? I should put in a plug. I need to do this on every one of my shows. We talk about these news items, you too can get these into your inbox every Friday morning. All you have to do is go to bit.ly, bit.ly/hospitality update with capital H, capital U, and you too can subscribe. It's as simple as that.
You could have made that shorter.
Yeah,
I could have. You're absolutely right.
You take a lesson from me on short URLs. Just saying.
I actually do have a shorter one too, but it's still not good. I was experimenting around with how I could make it really, really short. But I was trying to go for 3 letters, and it didn't really work out that well. So.
Lily says all the cool kids are subscribing.
That's absolutely true, because if you aren't a cool kid, I just delete it. Yeah.
Oh, exactly. There's a filter. No,
actually, I do have
to say, I'm not getting my email.
It's interesting. I'm on some sort of spam bot for my Rock Cheetah website, where there's a site. It's like supersend.me or something like that, and it just these crazy kind of URLs. It's that, and now another one has popped up, and every day I got 3 or 4 subscribes from this thing, and I just blast them all out because it's just garbage, right?
Do you have a CAPTCHA?
What? No, I don't have a CAPTCHA.
Okay, then that would
explain it.
Yeah. Oh wait, well, it's not.
It's a simple plugin. Just put the CAPTCHA plugin. You have to.
I know. No, I do have one, but I need to upgrade it. But again, I like to see what's going on with some of this stuff. So anyway, I probably.
Which explains why he has 1,100 something on his Facebook thing. Follow him.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, Miss Stephanie, people want to know more about Cogwheel Marketing. And by the way, I have a video link I got to send you because I recorded you for 6 minutes in your Q&A.
All right.
So you got some cool to play with.
Lauren, do you want to come clean about me telling you when I came out when you were at your little table saying that Stephanie's session was about to start, and then you pulled me in to talk and wouldn't allow me to go to the beginning of her session?
No, we don't have to mention that at all. We don't have to talk about that at all.
Lauren, he had already thrown you under the bus to me before, so I already knew. But I appreciate it.
I already ratted you out.
I lost track of time. But anyway, okay.
It's okay. It's okay. You can find me, Stephanie Sparks Smith, on LinkedIn. And then about 2 weeks from now, I'll be at the Hotel Revenue Conference here in Seattle. I'm doing a presentation. So if anybody is going to be there, look me up, or you can find me cogwheelmarketing.com.
Who's doing the revenue conference in Seattle?
It's a combination. The guy that I know is with Ivy. They do sales and catering software.
Mhm.
And then I know there's going to be a handful of like Focal Revenue. They do BI revenue management software.
So did they just kind of get a little group of these kind of vendors together to go do a conference? Is that the?
Yeah, I mean, I've never heard of it, but it seems to be, at least from from what Lily says, it's known in the world. So I'm going to check it out.
That's great. Cool.
Continues, Catherine.
And Lauren, where can they find you?
Oh, me, yeah. Everywhere. No. Well, for this show and all previous 233 shows, you can go to hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/live. There you'll see links to all the current shows for this year and the archive link to all the way back to 2014. Robert had dark hair back then. The podcast, well, you can also find the podcast Hospitality Marketing on 39 podcast platforms. We've broken now over 2,000 regular subscribers, and we're getting some interesting playbacks now that I'm doing transcriptions on it in multiple languages. I'll have to tell you guys about that. That's kind of interesting, where I'm transcribing the podcast and then throwing it in Spanish and German. It's changing the profile, which I thought was kind of interesting. And with that, let's see, I'm speaking at Navigate next month, and then the HSMI Curate later in the month of March. And then at Alhoa's conference in April. I'm trying to think where else there is. I got to go up to New York to Pegasus. Yeah, it's that time of year, right?
Wow. And we want you to know, for $40,000, which is a strict fee for Lauren to show up and to speak for any length of time. It's $40,000 flat. Flat fee plus, of course, travel and expenses.
5 stars
covered.
Yeah.
You too can have him, and you can see you better book early because his schedule is quite full.
Hey, Lily's going to be in Navigate too, and so too is Ed, and so too is Stuart. So it's going to be party in San Antonio.
Oh wow! And where's Navigate being held?
San Antonio.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah,
very nice.
So that should be an interesting couple of days in March with that kind of motley crew hanging around. Stephanie, you're going to have to find a place that you have to find an excuse to make it to San Antonio. Robert, same, so that we can go over and find a place like you found for New York that I'm now going to always go to when I go to New York.
So you can bail on dinner again? Bail on me and Robert again?
Yeah,
exactly.
I've already seen Hamilton, so yeah. Man, you guys are just brutal about the whole thing. Yes. But yes,
Stephanie,
I do.
If you walk outside the Hamilton Theater after it lets out, you can pick up those playbills on the street, which I'm pretty sure is what Lauren did. So.
Well,
I don't think you saw it.
Yeah,
I don't think you saw it.
I have to thank Jenny for that. That was an amazing experience. But yes, I did bail. Here I am running around the conference saying, "Hey, let's all go out to dinner. Let's go out to dinner." And then, "Hey, guess what, guys? I'm not going out to dinner."
That's right.
Yeah, it's bad. Mr. Robert, other than the amazing ability to get the newsletter, where can they find you, sir?
Yeah. bit.ly/hospitalityupdate.com. Or no, not .com. Oh, I gave the wrong bit.ly now. Rockcheetah.com or on social media at Robert K. Cole.
Excellent. Well, I hope you feel better, Lily, that your voice comes back. Because laryngitis really it's terrible. It hurts. People forget it's funny that you just can't hear anything, but it hurts. So, yeah. Anyways, thank you all. Thank you for everyone that was on the different channels for us today. I didn't see any questions pop up, which was weird because usually somebody says something on the other channels. Maybe I just missed it. But thank you all. We'll have show number 235 next week at 11:30 Eastern. And for those who are in the time zones of Australia or for APAC and EU, we do a replay of this show at 11:30 Wednesday mornings at Sydney time and on London time. So you'll see that in the HSMAI's Facebook events section if you want to sign up and do the playback for this with all the notes and so forth and links and all that. So until then, thank you, everyone, and we'll see everyone next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.